Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be where you are. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining me. My name is Jeff Fritz, and this is my live stream. This is where we're going to write a little bit of code together today. And I've got a guest. Oh my gosh. And I'm wearing my Liveshare hat because we're going to be doing a little bit of Liveshare. My guest today, it's Moz. It's Elizabeth Schneider. Hello, hello. There we go. Everybody can see you. Say hello to everybody.
Hi.
Hey.
Thanks for having me on. Glad to be able to join you now.
Oh, this is great. Thanks so much for joining and for writing code with us, and giving some great feedback there in the chat room over the last few months. And you got to join us because of the Bits for Bytes, right? You cheered a bit, and you were the top cheerer for November. So I'm more than happy to invite you on and write a little code together today.
Yeah, I did do a bit of cheering. That was actually my first time doing it, and didn't realize I had done so much of
it. It's not a problem, and of course, all of that is going to Girl Develop It from last year. We're doing Black Girls Code this month and through March. There we go. We've got some friends in the chat room that I know we all recognize. There's Tagaron and Bardaki, Robert Tables, of course. Veronica Hex is here. Hello, Veronica. Iron Lewis is here. CoderCat. Lannon BR, who will be joining us in the next few weeks for a pair programming session. Zoltra Lord. Hello, welcome. Stelzy is here. Hello. Cheering can get addictive, says Ultra Lord. I kind of agree. There comes times, I don't know about you, but I run into, I'll start cheering for some folks because they're doing something cool, and it's like, I need more bits. I need to go do more of this. I want to support. So why don't you tell folks a little bit about your background, what you're working on. You mentioned you had an open source project. Share a little bit about that too.
Sure. So I'm a completely self-taught developer. I'm actually even as far as a high school dropout.
Wow.
And then I currently work for an organization called Pivotal Software. We're a cloud developer advocacy group for Spring and Cloud Foundry.
Okay.
We have our own forks of all of that and maintain those open source projects. We're also the maintainer for, I believe it is RabbitMQ and another large things at the corporate level. And then for those that don't know, we're also now a .NET Foundation corporate sponsor.
Love that.
Yeah, which is really cool. And then from my personal side, as part of my learning process, I got into open source and used that as a way of learning code. And I took over the maintenance of a project called Zendesk API_v2 from a team that was doing that, or a couple of developers that were doing that in the open source space on GitHub. And now maintain that full time on the side for myself.
Very cool. Do you have a link for that? We can take a look at the project real quick. Promote that a little bit. While you're looking that up, hello, Aluth and Ancient Coder. Welcome.
Here, I will send it to you 2 different ways. I will share it in the chat as well.
There we go. I will copy that link.
So we do that. I maintain that. I've actually just recently started created a group or organization on GitHub for that. And I've started a second repository that'll be version 4 of that. That's a complete rewrite as a net standard library.
Okay.
The current version of it uses an older version of the HTTP client called Web Request, and gets into some weird async deadlocks at random times.
Cool. So let's back up and talk about that for a little bit, so that some of the folks that are watching make sure that they're up to speed. So this is a project that connects to Zendesk, and what does Zendesk do?
It's a ticketing / customer support, open documentation for your customers platform. It's a P4 thing that a lot of corporations use.
Something like a help desk software.
Yep. Or customer service, like. I know, I think one of the major banks uses it to track all the calls that you call in with. All the actual financial data stored in something else, but this handles your history as a customer. And they actually use my library to do a lot of stuff. I know, I think IBM uses it to do their ticketing for like their, break fix. Hey, my computer's dead.
Yeah.
And so when they need to send somebody physically to you, they have an app that they use that does that.
Okay. And they go and they connect through using their app uses your API to connect out
Yep.
to Zendesk. Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
So
And it's just a small little library. It's tiny. And then the latest release, we just added code signing and Nougat package signing, which was kind of hard as an individual doing an open source project. Getting that cert took more time than I thought.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of time getting that certificate. But then, right, you get all those benefits of it appearing as secured and signed, and it shows up, right? Don't they do signatures on Nougat.org now? And it
Yes,
shows
they
up
do.
with a nice check.
So if you search for Zendesk there, in Nougat, yeah, I'm the Zendesk _v2 there, yeah.
There you go.
And then version 3.10 there, which we just released, has a number of large bug fixes, a few feature adds from things, but that's going to be our last major release on this package name. I'm going to rename it and create it because it's a complete rewrite, so I don't want to break anybody.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And great numbers there on the downloads, more than 350,000 total downloads. Awesome. Congrats to you.
Thank you.
That is phenomenal to see. Now, and you mentioned you're going through the process of making it .NET standard. You've run into some issues with web request. So I'm guessing that right now, yeah, this is .NET Framework 4.5.2, and you are starting on .NET Standard.
Yeah, so we did add standard because it is technically compatible, but the way the project was originally architected, best practices for async await were not adhered to. And I'm afraid to make those changes and cause more issues in this package. So I'm going to start over and do the configure await faults and things of that nature all the way through the stack. We're going to try to keep it net standard 2.0 or whatever the recommended from you guys are at Microsoft at the time that we release. But I've created the repository. It's out there. You can get to it on GitHub, and it's got a first pass on it. So if you go up to the Speedy Geek repo, and I just happen to own that domain, so that's why
Nice.
Speedy Geek so it's Speedy Geek. And I haven't actually set anything up for it, but you'll see the Zendesk API there at the top, which will be a complete. I haven't released anything yet, but I'm starting on it, and I'm taking some ideas. I don't know if you've ever worked with. I think it's Flural, the Fluent URL. Yeah.
Right, Fluent URL. I've seen this, but I haven't used it.
Yeah. There's a concept that they show in theirs that I really like is the testing component there, where you can set up a mock in your unit test there, and it does it all in memory for you.
Nice.
And I want to add this to this because there's no way to currently easily do this for anything that supports Zendesk, because you actually have to call into a Zendesk API.
Oh, yeah.
So currently, like all the unit tests for the project, thank God Zendesk gives us a sandbox area as a donation. But we actually have to hit their endpoints and create tickets and create stories and create issues and stuff like that. And that sometimes can cause issues because of timeouts and things of that nature when you're running the unit tests. So I want to add something similar to what they're doing there.
Oh, yeah. And I run into this also with my interactions that I do with Twitch, where I'm trying to connect out to them, and I want to verify that I properly did this. And you see it in some of my project around Stream Tools, where I actually have a test that will fail if I'm running the test during a stream. It's like,
yeah,
well, it should have called this, and it should have behaved like this. So,
yeah, there's ways to mock it in the HTTP client in .NET in the base class libraries by giving it a different message handler that doesn't actually call out to the web. And some of the stuff for ASP.NET Core actually sets that up for you when you use the
factory.
The HTTP client factory stuff and the new test framework that they added in 2.1.
Okay.
for the integration stuff, and so that's I want to take advantage of that stuff for the next version. But again, that's stuff that requires the fundamental plumbing to change, and I don't want to break because this is being used in production code.
Oh yeah. No, just the idea of I don't want to break production. Nice mug. I saw that.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just checking that alert real quick. The alert box was a little loud, and I want to make sure I turn him down. I don't want to hear Steve yelling all day here. No, I have the volume down there. All right. There he is again. Even though I've got him turned all the way down, he's still loud. All right. So I love the direction you're going, and certainly the concept of not breaking folks that are in production is huge, and it becomes much more of a problem as as you scale and more people have your application installed. I'm fortunate in that some of the projects that I'm working on nobody's using, so I don't have to worry about that. I can just break myself.
Yeah, writing stuff for yourself, you can break all you want.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. So I don't feel too bad about that. But at the same time, it's like I don't want to. I want to abide by semantic versioning, right? Don't set up those major versions unless you are ready to break something.
That's one thing I've been trying to find. I don't know if the chat room or you might know of a tool. I would love a way to automate the detection of you did something that's going to break people.
Oh, that's
like a CI/CD type scan. I want to say it was like JetBrains or Telerik or one of those companies had an open source tool that was supposed to be that, but I've never heard of anything being finally released.
Yeah, so this is the semantic versioning website. This is for those of you that are watching that aren't familiar with this concept. Versions have 3 segments, right? 2.0.0, you have a major, a minor, and a patch version. And you only change that first number when you make breaking API changes. I think you're right. There was some sort of I
know there's tools like Git version or the NerdBank one that a lot of the ASP open source projects use that do Git versioning. So they look at your Git commits and how you say what you're doing is. But I would love a tool that validates that those two things match, what you say you're doing and what you actually did. But especially for .NET, because adding a parameter overload does break binary compatibility.
It breaks binary compatibility, but at the same time, you're not necessarily, by adding an overload, you're not necessarily breaking somebody else's code, right? I think breaking binary compatibility versus breaking somebody's code, making it behave differently.
You'd be amazed how many people intend to be able to upgrade your software, though, by doing DLL copies.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's like, just do a Nougat reference. And they're like, yeah, we can't for corporate policy reasons or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, sorry I broke you. But yeah, just recompile. You'll be good.
Yeah, right? Oh, my gosh. Okay. So right, that's that. For those of you that don't understand the term binary compatibility, let's make sure we recap that for them, Elizabeth. Binary compatibility means you can just swap in a DLL and it still works. It still has the same outward surface, API surface that people can touch and interact with in their existing projects.
Yeah. So you can just do under the hood, compile your software and then just change the DLL, say in your bin directory or something of that effect.
Yeah.
And that does work a lot. But again, like I said, if you add, like, say, if you change a parameter that was there to now be, say, like an optional parameter, that breaks that for .NET at least.
Yep.
And most people don't think about that. So that I get a lot of pull requests that make those changes quite regularly. But we have to do it slightly different, where we actually add a full-blown overload, which does not break binary compatibility.
So let me ask the short-sighted question. Wouldn't unit tests help show, oh, you've broken this API, you've made a change that affects the way this API behaves, or you've adding an API is not a breaking change, but changing the behavior of it, right? A unit test would surface.
Yeah, the unit test would normally surface, but again, with like an optional parameter, the unit test doesn't throw that, hey, you need to fix me, and therefore you've broken the public-facing API.
Right.
Because unit tests run at compile time, they get that new compiled copy that has that properly. You'd almost need to reference a packaged version of your assembly in your unit test in order to catch that break.
Okay.
Not do a project reference. And that's where it's like, I wish there was like a CI/CD tool where I could say, hey, go out to Nougat, get my previous version of the package, get the one I'm about to publish, and run a diff on them. You know, and tell me if what you detect to be the public API is different.
Sure. That feels like a plugin that somebody could drop into CI/CD pretty easy. You know, if gosh, and I'm trying to think who would be on top of a problem like that. And
I just was wondering, if there was somebody that had that, knowledge of, hey, we use this thing to do that. But I haven't stumbled across anybody that's had that blog post or anything of that yet.
CoderCat says, what about a tool that would run your unit tests on the older Nougat package? No, I don't think that quite hits it. Immo might be a good person to talk to about that. Immo Landworth is a program manager on the .NET team. Tagaron says, binary compatibility can be a problem if you want to recompile as soon as you also use another component that uses the same package that is broken and you have no access to. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because the current packages are all based on JSON.NET. A lot of people use that. A lot of people are using tools that point to very old versions of it.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where we get into some of the crazy around it, is because I'm actually using a couple of the newer features because the Zendesk API uses SnakeCase.
SnakeCase. Okay. Which one is SnakeCase?
So it's underscores in between the words. I think it originally comes from I think it's used quite extensively in the Ruby and in Perl areas and stuff like that. So I don't know what the Zendesk stack is. I assume it might be Ruby. But
Oracle used to do this a lot too.
Yeah, all their methods, all their properties in their JSON objects have that style to them, and that's not something that's supported by the older versions out of the box of JSON.NET. The newer versions have a SnakeCase naming convention provider.
Okay.
Which I had to upgrade to be able to use, because adding an attribute to every property in every model is kind of annoying.
That's a pain in the neck. Oh my gosh. All right. So I'm, of course, familiar with various letter cases, right? CamelCase is a big one that I like to use. CamelCase or PascalCase.
Yeah, CamelCase is the default from JSON.NET and most JavaScript. I think all the Node APIs are based around CamelCase.
Yeah.
Or no, is it CamelCase? Yeah, CamelCase.
Yeah.
And then it's PascalCase is what most models for .NET tend to use.
Yep. So, and CamelCase is first capital of each word kind of jammed together, no space in between them. PascalCase,
except for the first letter of the very first thing, is lowercase.
No, I thought
so the first word is lowercase.
Yeah, there we go. Like that.
Yep.
And PascalCase is every word is capitalized.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that actually comes from Xander Helsberg.
Yeah. Now, which one is title case? Capital case, headline style. Which one is that one?
It's certain words are.
Okay. So, yeah, like over in
are considered non big words, so they're not.
Now the one that I've started seeing people use is the KebabCase. And this one just kind of strikes me as funny, using hyphens in between instead of underscores.
The biggest place that I see that is in URL encoding, because hyphens are easier to see in a browser.
Sure.
To differentiate, because some browsers clip the underscores.
Yeah, I've heard it referred to as KebabCase, but I've never heard it referred to as TrainCase. That's the first time I've seen this.
Oh yeah, that's the first time I have heard KebabCase, and I think there may be somebody that's written a plugin for JSON.NET to do
kebab. Neat.
But I haven't seen a publicly corporate API that uses it.
No,
and
I
being
haven't.
Somebody that works for Pivotal, I see a lot of corporate code. So,
Svetzel says closure script use KebabCase. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So KebabCase is great for SEO in the URL, says Johan Fleury. Oh, yeah, like you were saying, easier to see on the URL line. Special case styles, like you see it there, really hard to see with the underscores in the browser. I guess it'd be easier to see if it was hyphens. Also easier to, I guess, read, right? Special underscore case underscore styles instead of special dash case dash styles.
Yeah, I prefer the underscores personally, but I can understand why certain systems would want to differentiate it.
Yeah. Okay. Hadn't really thought about it. Just because I'm such a CamelCase or PascalCase person.
Yeah, and if you're using a system that is JavaScript, you get to deal with both of those, especially if you're doing C# in JavaScript or JSON.
Oh yeah.
It just kind of auto happens for you. You don't even have to think about it.
You end up mixing and matching.
Yeah, I think the default out of the box implementation of the JSON serializer for say like .NET Core auto adds the Camel and Pascal settings for you, so it'll detect them and auto do it.
Oh yeah. It makes my life a heck of a lot easier. All right, I'm just peeking around here to make sure we're clear. So I had talked to you the other day, and I thought it might be neat to do a little bit of refactoring, write a little bit of code around some of the algorithms around the oil tank project that I've been working on. For those of you that haven't seen, I've been building out, and I even wrote a blog post yesterday about this. Here we go. I'm going to promote my own blog. There it is, sitting in my basement. So my little Raspberry Pi with the camera wired up and a Wi-Fi adapter, little light, and it's pointing right at the gauge on top of this oil tank. Svetzel, thanks so much for the subscription. I appreciate that. And that's still really loud, even though I've completely muted it. How annoying. Sorry about that. So what I've done is I've got this taking pictures once every 4 hours, and we've said, you know what, it'd be easier, it'd be kind of cool if we could refactor this, make it simpler, maybe even make it detect exactly where it is, because you can see here, it's literally just sitting in a specific place on top of this shelf pointed at it.
Yeah, be afraid to bump that right now.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a problem. Because if I don't even want to touch the Pi, because if I don't want to accidentally bump and move things. So a suggestion that we received the other day was, well, wait, we know the relative height of the numbers, and we know that it's also detecting when you look at the picture that it takes. Let me see if I scroll down to the picture that it's actually capturing. In my case, it sees this word Scully there. No X-Files reference intended. It's just kind of a thing. Stelzy makes a very good point. If there was an earthquake, if I lived in a region with earthquakes, that camera's going to move, and now all my calculations and location are going to get knocked out of whack. But I know how tall the digit is relative right now. We could measure how tall that word Scully is and get some relative information and kind of build an algorithm so that if the size of the image changes, if the position of the camera changes, which would in effect change the height of these things, we could have a better algorithm to determine here's the height of the window and here's the position of the number, instead of the fixed numbers that I have right now that are kind of based on the size and shape of the image that I'm capturing. So I thought it'd be neat to spend some time kind of working through that algorithm, do a little bit of refactoring, because I've also heard from folks who say, well, I've got a similar problem, but I've got a different gauge. So how would I work this with the gauge that I have? So does that sound like an easy idea, cool thing here to look at and figure out? Let's refactor?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah. Robert Table says, can it tell where the baseline or top of the Scully is? Yes. And Rambling Geek was saying, I think of using Scully as the alignment target. In my case, yes, but it's my case, which I think, Elizabeth, I think that's a interesting first refactoring of maybe I pull out the logic for my gauge into a separate class and then load that, or have some sort of configuration that says, we'll use Jeff's configuration. And then maybe
do some dependency injection kind of style stuff.
Yeah. So let's. I'm going to close some of these windows. I'm going to leave this open so that we have a reference as to some of these locations, and I'll even grab one of these photos that it's been capturing so we can do some measuring of size. And I think the folks in the chat room have the right idea here. Let's figure out the actual position of these things, and we can start to do some calculations. So I'm going to minimize there. I've already got Visual Studio opened, and this is pointing to the project. I'm going to start using Liveshare. I've got the logo up there. Please complete the sign in the browser window. Blah, 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 blah. Let me sign in. Excuse me. So I will sign into my Microsoft account. Make sure that works. Ready to collaborate. Fantastic. And you see the little sharing doodad going by here. And in a second, there we go. I'm going to copy the invitation link and send that over to Elizabeth. There we go. So I sent that over Skype. And you'll be able to join in just a second. There we go. And you see the initials up there. So you're in, and I can see the little tape flag where you are in the code. Fantastic. Just like we planned it. Okay, so this is, for those of you who haven't seen, this is an Azure Functions project. This is a project that has C#. It's compiled with .NET Framework, and it has this one function, this main method in it, that gets triggered using this little hint here. When a photo gets uploaded, right? A photo gets uploaded, it ends up in blob storage. The presence of that in this oil tank storage location triggers and passes along, here's the image, here's the name of the image that's captured in the file name here, and then we can work with it. So where I kind of jump off and I'm off doing my own thing here, as far as recognizing and doing some of these calculations, I have this one method that I call on 34 that goes off and says send to the text recognition API, which is another Azure service that identifies the numbers that it sees. And I'm going to jump into that. I pressed F12. Why aren't you navigating? Go to definition. Yeah, F12.
F-lock.
There it goes. Yeah. So down here, you can see this is where it makes out and calls the recognize text API. Now, I think this is something that I don't have to change. I think we still want to do this. I think the full image location, though, that we probably want to change and refactor at some point, put this into a configuration parameter somewhere. So I'm not too concerned about moving it.
Yeah, you're gonna wanna parameterize that so others can add it, configure that for themselves.
Yeah. And you can see up here further, I do configuration manager app settings and then whatever to get the settings from the application. You know what? Yeah, let's now I feel guilty, and it's like, all right, maybe I should do that real quick. Full image location equals this. And then, yeah, it's like blob location or something. And store it there, and then I need to grab the name somehow and tack it onto the end. Maybe I can just do something like and name, like that.
You could do it as a string format, and just retrieve the value from the to insert the name. So string.format value blob location.
So if I did this, well, then I'm expecting a string format to be
to contain wherever it needs to insert the name. I don't know if anybody would so then literally your string interpolation string would be what would go in. You would just change name to say be like 0.
Yeah, to 0 here because it's a formatting string and it would drop in there.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean,
sure. Okay.
I don't know if that's as maintainable than just saying it's got to be everything up to the name, and you just concatenate.
So I'm going to copy these two values out and make sure that I remember to change that setting over in my what's it called? In my thing, the place. In my
Azure portal.
In my Azure portal. Thank you. Okay. Service address, I think we're okay to leave the way it is, but I think the rest of this for right now, it deserializes the object and it comes out as a text result. And here's where I think we can start to jump in, and we'll be able to start detecting some of the other things here. In my case, well, there's a bounding box each time that comes out on a line that's detected, and there's a line that's returned that says Scully in it. If I bring up the source code, and I actually have this saved in the docs folder, I have what the JSON looked like from one time that I went and navigated here. You can see, right, there's a line and it has the text Scully. So I can definitely align on that and figure out, well, here's where it's positioned, right? It's XY coordinates. So XY, and that's the top left corner. XY, and that's the top right corner, right? Et cetera, the rest of the way around that word. So if I wanted to align on that, I think we want to start pulling some of this code out into another class, like you were saying.
Yeah, so you're passing into this text API. I'm sorry. Can you? Actually, I guess I can do it.
You can navigate. Yeah.
I was just trying to. You're not in this method here. I don't see that you're actually doing any detection stuff. But this result we could pass to, say, like another delegate.
Exactly.
That would do that. I think you call it get absolute value.
Yeah, where I do this method
do the
here.
Math. Yeah, you do the math of the detection there and do some scaling and stuff like that. Like I would almost make that become a delegate that gets called, or something that gets injected into this that other people can then go write their own implementation of.
Create an interface, put that method somewhere else, and create a function, a class that concretely implements that method, called Fritz's oil tank, whatever, and go put it over there.
Yeah, and then you're just taking this text result that we're converting on line 123 here from JSON, and just pass that in, so we get that object that you shown captured in your stuff, and then we do all the parsing of, okay, we found Scully, we found this. Other people can use whatever results come back from their text recognition to do that math for them.
Right, because other folks, when they look at this, right, I'm doing an adjustment because the arrow's in the middle. Their arrow might be at the top. It might be at the bottom. It might be something completely different.
Dial gauge rather than a vertical.
Yes. So you need to figure out in that arc all kinds of different ways. So I think let's start refactoring. Do you want to introduce the interface and start defining some of this?
Sure. Let's do where did my sorry, it's closed the solution explorer on my side. Okay. So if we create an it's not allowing me to add. Are we in read only?
You shouldn't be in read only. Sharing. Come on. Can you change anything?
No.
Because I purposely did not choose.
Yeah, I'm trying to right click and add an interface or add class, and it's not allowing me to do so.
Can you type anything? Oh yeah.
You can insert into here.
So
let's try the manual way then here.
Yeah, just if we define an interface and then move it out to another file, it'll work. Robert Tables asks, the idea of different gauges, maybe name them by type of gauge in the future to let people create or supply new types. That's not a bad idea either, yeah. I just don't know the different kinds of these gauges to associate any names to things. Right, that's a good point from Robert, is if, right, we're, gosh, I wouldn't know how to name this type of gauge. It's kind of...
Yeah, I've never heard of a specific, like I've seen dial gauges.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
sure.
That would be one, but I've never seen the style that you have on your tank, which is more akin to probably a float gauge.
Yeah, something...
My gauge reader. Let's call it that.
Okay.
And then, what are we going to need? We're going to need something that takes our text results, right? So we're going to have a process text result.
Process text result. That's not bad.
And then we just take in our text result, right?
Yeah. Where is it? Text result dot root object. Yeah.
Is it root object? Okay.
Robert asks, Moz, how's Liveshare working on your end? Looks pretty smooth so far.
Yeah, other than I can't right click on the project and add stuff.
So, I wonder if that's a security thing that they're trying to protect.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm used to going to project, right click, and add existing or add new item kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I also tried Shift Alt A, which is the shortcut for add class.
Yeah, and it wouldn't let you do that.
Nope. I don't know what
would we be returning? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know of anything yet, so I'm gonna make it void right now, and we can update once we know.
Sure. Maybe instead of calling it result, what if we called this? What if we called that raw data?
Okay.
Right, because we're kind of dependent on the raw results coming back. And Stelzy has a good idea for an initial name for the concrete class we're going to refactor into. Vertical numbered float gauge. That's not bad.
That's not bad at all. Okay, so we have that, and then I just pick the random things, so I'm just going to do that because I'm OCD like that. But see, for me, it's now, I don't see it.
Where did it go?
I was supposed to add it as a new, move it to its own
its own file, and I don't see it. Did it not add it to the project?
Yeah, so maybe if you...
No, I don't see it in the project. That's weird.
Well, we'll pull it back then.
Yeah, all right, so what I'll tell you what then, I'll grab this, I'll cut and create a new file. And I don't care the name of it. I'm just going to paste this in. There it is. And then
newest, coolest feature in Visual Studio 2019 is that when you do that rename, it auto renames the class as well.
Yeah. It should have done that, but didn't. You're renaming a file? No, don't.
Okay.
Now, wait a sec. I renamed the file, and look at this. It reset the content. Yeah, the content's gone. Okay, that's pretty weird right there.
Yeah. Oh.
All right, cool. There we go. Yeah, so we're working. So Sirius now is in the chat room asking about, well, what's oil tank vision? Let me share the blog post here.
By the way, that should become something we put into the Fritz bot.
Oh yeah.
So that every time you start a stream, you can say what repo we're working on, and somebody can just do bang project or whatever and get the.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Right in the chat.
Or have a end. So let me ask you about that while we're talking about that functionality, because that's a great comment. You know, we do get that question a lot while we're going along here, and it's not a knock on anybody who asks that question, but it does cause us to stop and say, well, here's what we're working on. I feel like I've seen how friends like NoOpCat do that, where they've got a command that they set up ahead of time that says, here's what we're working on. I would love to be able to allow moderators to be, or of course myself, in the chat room to be able to reset what that value is. Not just have it, Nightbot folks will go and set, here's a block of text for, you know, to describe what we're working on. But to be able to have a moderator reset that text by just saying, like
having querying to see who is a moderator, have them call the command and pass in a parameter following the command.
And here's the new text to set and remember.
And then it catches that and updates the Nightbot command.
Either update the Nightbot command. I'm not using Nightbot or use my own bot, but yes.
Oh, okay.
But point's the same. Update that block of text and just have it sitting out there. Yeah.
That'd be pretty. As long as there's APIs, I don't know the Twitch API well enough to know if you can query if a user is a mod on a given channel.
Yes,
so, yeah,
absolutely.
That shouldn't be too difficult of a thing to add. Be a decent thing to throw in the backlog. in
my bot, see, look at this. We're going off the rails here. In my bot,
it's not a stream unless you do that at least once.
Oh my gosh, that's the truth. Yes, always off the rails. When I run a command over here, like here's the attention command. You receive. Where is it? Execute. You receive the chat service. You receive the username. Not that one. It's in one of the newer ones actually. Because
the hypertext one maybe.
No, I don't think it's. Not that one. There's an extended command 2 that actually I'm passing along information about. Come on, I'm passing along information about the user who's executing the command, and then I behave appropriately. I do it in that sleep command. There we go. basic command 2, and I set the execute so that I'm passing in whether or not you're a moderator. Here, look, I'll even show you this over here. This is the code that I'm logging right now from the bot. And you can see badges. And it shows you, here's all the badges that the person has. And I'm going to pick on Stelzy for a second because Stelzy was the last person that commented. They've got the VIP badge here, subscriber badge, et cetera, et cetera. So what the bot actually does is detect which badge, and then I set those flags so that we can detect in code and behave appropriately.
Very cool. So yeah, a lot of the plumbing looks like it'd be done then.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be hard to add the ability to just say, hey, what was the text following the command?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you know, update some source in memory of what's the current active project in a small description of it.
Yeah. So tell you what, while we're working on this project, can somebody in the chat room just create a quick issue to talk about the current project command? And
because that would be helpful for the moderators then when someone does arrive a little late or something like that and ask that, they can just fire off that command and it'll instantly tell them.
Okay. And now I'm completely off the rails thinking, should we go work on that right now, or do we want to keep working on this?
I'm fine with either, but why don't we?
Yeah, let's keep going here. We started on this. Don't need to get that far off the rails.
Okay. So you mentioned somebody had a good name for our concrete implementation.
Yeah, Stelzy called it vertical numbered float gauge. I'm going to grab that, and right below where you define the interface, I'm just going to paste in that name as a new class.
Okay, cool. And we'll just work on it all in this file until we're happy with it.
And it's an I gauge reader, and I'll control dot on that to implement the interface.
Okay. So then, in that scenario, essentially, then what we're going to take from that is the math that you're doing around this, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to take the math that I have over here on the right. Where is it?
Yeah, so you have the calculate absolute value right now is what you have, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so right now I'm seeing that also our iGauge reader is missing a few things maybe that we might want to add to our stuff around, like, say, like a trace logger, and maybe even the date time for the
reading.
I don't know if the gauge needs that information, but it might need it to give it back as a part of the result.
So
this oil tank reading, like, I don't know if we want to return that as our result.
Thinking out loud, what if we made the oil tank reading, right, and that's the value that comes out, and we end up storing in the database using Azure Table Storage. What if we pass that in by ref and we preload it, right? Because I'm only passing in the date so that I can set it right here on line 71.
Okay. So you pass that by ref into the method, and then you just
update with the new information that we calculate.
Okay. Do you want to possibly go maybe in an immutable interface around that?
I think I know what you're talking about, but what do you mean by an immutable interface?
Essentially being that we would pass it, but not you would get a copy or a clone of that returned back to you, not an updated of the one that you passed in. And that gives you the ability to be thread safe, or at least that's my understanding of it.
So pass in an oil tank reading object that's preloaded with the date and return an updated one. And any
other properties that may hang off of that need to be updated. You return a new one that has those same values on it, but you don't modify the one that gets passed in.
Sure. That makes sense. So we pass it by val in, and we return a new one that has all the data loaded into it.
Yeah.
Sure. So in that way, I think if you extend the process text result method there on line 12 to
take in
trace writer, let's take in a trace writer log. I think that makes sense. And then also pass in, here's the current state of the reading, and then return one.
Yep. And then if there's any extra data that needs to be added, what is it? Oil. Here, we'll just do it from function here.
Yeah, copy paste.
Oil tank.
Hey, there's our friend Brian Clark in the chat room. Thanks for joining us today.
And then we're going to...
Yeah, it becomes more of a fluent method chaining thing. That's a great comment from Stelzy.
Yeah, And that's where I come from in my thinking on it, especially with open source work I'm doing lately. Is I'm trying to make my system so that it can be chained.
And I'm going to grab those 2 parameters that you added and add them to the interface.
Okay.
And we also wanted to return the oil tank reading, so why don't we make that the return value also? So we're both typing and making changes at the same time in the same code because we are using Liveshare. It's not, I'm using Visual Studio 2017. It's an extension you can add in. It's also available for Visual Studio Code, but it comes with, it's in the box for the next Visual Studio 2019. Yeah, everybody Twitter account, that project command, that's what we're going to make in, we'll probably do it in another stream. We'll write that up. But if somebody wants to document what the project command should do over there in the GitHub repository, we'll schedule that for the near future.
Okay. And just as a first pass at this process text result, I'm going to take this kind of our calculate absolute value here, and I'm just going to kind of tweak it here.
Cool. Okay.
And I know we're going to need these last couple of, because you're currently using them in your other code here. So I'm going to leave them up here at the top to remind me that we need to fix them.
Okay, makes sense.
And do I have an extra curly brace somewhere here?
Uh-oh, my Visual Studio's gone non-responsive.
Uh-oh. What was it? My giant copy paste on it?
Oh no. It crashed. Oh boy. Let me recover selected files. Yes, please. Yeah, you probably got cut off on Liveshare. Yep, everybody can debug together with Liveshare to the questions in the chat room. All right, let's try Liveshare again. Rats. And it's probably going to make me log in again, too. You can share terminal access as well, yes.
Terminal and server if you're running IIS Express.
Oh my gosh, yes. Even, what's it called? Kestrel.
Kestrel, yeah. Kestrel, and I think in the stuff for code can do the node. So if you have node running through your terminal in VS Code, it'll allow the others to access it so that you can load it up.
Do a little port forwarding, that type of thing.
Ooh. Yeah.
Hey, Fairy Wings, thanks so much for that resub. 3 months with us. I really appreciate you supporting us. And we'll match and make a donation to Black Girls Code for that. Visual Studio Code can do it also. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Code is because it's cross-platform. If you're one person's on Windows, one person's on a Mac. I do a lot of paired programming for work where the other individual's on a Mac.
And not just Mac, but Linux also.
Yes.
So I've actually done some work where I've been on a Linux VM and I've got folks connected in using a Mac or Windows, and it just works. Really neat stuff. I'm trying to make sure I have. There it is. This is where we are. Calculate absolute value.
Yeah, there we are.
Let's
delete that. Let's do this just for now so the compiler doesn't complain.
Wow, everybody's responding to everybody Twitter account there. That's so nice. Everybody's really eager to help out in the chat room. Thank you. So I like that you've taken what were parameters being passed into this that are really specific to my model of this gauge. Let's break them out as variables that are only in this concrete class.
But for at least now, we may need to change them. You know, I figured that, but I wanted to not lose them so that down here in the lower code it blows up on us.
Oh yeah, and thinking out loud, these are those positions that we're going to eventually need to calculate. The top of the window, the height of the window, the height of a digit. We're going to need to calculate those. And for right now, we can start with, well, the calculation down below that actually does, here's the relative value to adjust, stays the same, but identifying those values, that's where we need to do some work. Janescu, thanks for the sub. I appreciate you joining us. Hey, that was actually Clark.io passed along that sub. Thank you so much, Brian, for gifting a sub. We'll match and make a donation to Black Girls Code.
That's what we're missing. I'm like, why is everything red?
Oh, we didn't have a curly brace? There we go. Okay. So
I don't know if I'm doing this wrong. I know you prefer tabs, but I think my formatting sticking spaces everywhere.
That's fine. We'll forgive you. Let's see here.
Yes, I'm one of the nut jobs that does white space on.
I know that's an F# thing too. I'm a tabs person. I like tabs.
Tabs are great. I love it. I just prefer editor config to be in the project to force it.
Did I put an editor?
I've dealt with enough DevOps that where certain things don't like one or the other. New lines are my mortal enemy.
Okay. Robert Table says, when thinking about calculating, are we thinking camera position in a viewport window? What about zoom or the z-axis? If the camera shifted closer or farther away? I think all those problems kind of go away because we're really only looking at the. I don't know about z-axis, but I will know the position that the digits are in, and that header text. Let me bring that back up in the image so that we've got the reference, right? This header text up here. I know the relative size of that. We're going to grab that relative size compared to the size of the digit, right? So in my photos, I know this is 50 pixels. If this ends up being like 25 pixels, then I can rely on, and I'll actually see the height of both of these in the results, right? Because I know, actually, here it is, right? Here's the actual height. It's 149 to 177. And you can see it's actually kind of skewed, right? Because the word Scully goes from position 502 to 620. To 504 is.
So it's off by a couple of pixels.
Right, it's off by it's tilted. Now that means that my camera isn't perfectly straight pointing at it. Okay, not too bad. But we know that the vertical position, right, the height of this is 149 to 177. And I'm only looking at the left side of the S, right? Right here. So by looking at that, I know it's 149 to 177. So that's what, about 30 pixels, 28 pixels high? So if my numbers, right, and you can see there, it's 272 to 322. It's exactly 50 pixels. So it's 28 to 50, right? And I can reduce that. That's what? Do the math, Jeff. Do the math. 56%. The height of the digit is the height of that. Okay.
Yeah. But and then from there you can extrapolate the size of that box that is the gauge.
Yeah.
So that you can position where am I in relativity to that Scully? Am I closer to it or lower below it?
And because I know those relative positions, I also can figure out the position of the top of the window.
And therefore understand where are you closer to the center of that gauge or
right
or not.
Right. So let me
because you're adding a bit of a fudge factor here to account for where in the gauge window are you.
Exactly. Right. So this is the results that I get. So the three values that we need: top of digit. Well, we know the top of digit because it's this value right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hang on. We need to know the top of the gauge, the height of the gauge, and the height of a digit. The height of the digit we can calculate by taking. It comes out of the bounding box, right? The height of the digit is this first value. That's the top of the digit. The bottom of the digit is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the fifth is the bottom of the digit. So if I subtract the two, then I've got the height of the digit. I don't need to do any funny math on that. Azure has actually told me what this is.
Yeah, yeah, and then you could from that calculate what the height is based on how close you are to the
height of the
camera
window
gets moved and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So oh my gosh. Okay, thinking out loud. I'm going to introduce here on line 22. I'm going to take height of digit. Let me take this and break this out here as a little calculation, because I think we have that, right? If we say the oil tank reading, which has that bounding. Oh no, it doesn't have the bound. Oh, the raw data has it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that has, right, what I've got here for this raw data root object is actually this result, this JSON, turned into a C# object. So it has a status. I want to be able to reach into that bounding box. Oh, crumbs,
Actually,
but I'm going to need to find...
I'm going to do this.
Let me move height of digit. I think you were right where you had it. Right.
Well, you could pull it out into like an inline function or something if you wanted to as well.
Well, let's do this. I'm going to leave it here, and when I can't set the height of the digit until I actually find the digit, and that's what this for is doing, right? It's finding the digit. Thanks to our new followers out there. Core activities is that Edge MN27? Thank you. So where it finds it, the height of the digit, I can put here.
Function 1, here we go.
Right, if I say height.
So, yep, and if I fix this, you'll get better IntelliSense.
I'm going to get rid of it there. So we know that it's going to be line bounding box. And it was which one? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the fifth minus the top of the digit. I can just say top of digit. And that'll give me the height of the digit. I need to turn this. Oh, no, it is an integer. Fantastic. All right, so that's the height of the digit. Don't have to pass that in as an outside variable. Cool. Zoom is what Robert is interested in about the zoom. I don't think we need to worry about zoom.
Zoom will be accounted for in this because we're taking what the API recognized as actual text. So they're doing the calculations for us on the Azure side for if we're zoomed in farther, those numbers will be different, but we're just going to get them and use them to calculate it.
Yeah, right? Because we'll have, here's the shape and size of the numbers. Zoom doesn't become a thing anymore. We're only concerned about the position inside the photo.
Yes, and then you're essentially just saying whatever you recognized, tell me about it. And then we know that every time it takes the photo and does a scan of the recognized text, we know from experience that it's always going to see this Scully. So if we recognize everything based off of whatever that relative position is, we don't matter if our zoom is different, if we're if the camera slides to the left a little bit or slides to the right a little bit, because it's all relative to where did it recognize in the photo.
Yeah,
that Scully, that S of Scully.
Right, because the digits, they move around. Right, we know the height of it. The top of the gauge is going to be relative to the Y position of Scully. So, okay.
So we know that the bottom of that S is at, in this case, based on accounting before, I think it's 177.
Yep, there you go.
Yep. So it's that's the bottom, left corner of that S or right corner of that S, and then we can, know that, it's X% of that to the top of the gauge,
Okay. So we know the height of Scully is 28 pixels, and in this photo, right? If we make this kind of the standard that we calculate from,
yep.
The top of the gauge I'm actually passing that in as a parameter here. Where did I have that in a... It's a configuration option in the portal. I'm going to need to grab it out of there because I didn't make it visible here. That's annoying. I'm logging into the portal over here on another browser so I don't accidentally share out my configuration.
No secrets being shared.
Yeah, I don't need to dox myself again.
Woo!
Wow, that was loud. Okay. Let me see here. So that is... And Azure Functions don't appear in the dashboard yet, in the portal.
You can add it yourself, but it does not come up by default.
Yeah, on the recently used stuff.
Yeah.
As long as Scully is always in the frame, says CoderCat. Oh, that's a good point. As long as it detects, for my gauge, as long as it detects it.
So we may want to put in the recognition result where we're saying get lines. We may want to do this where that we're doing with the no low confidence. May want to add another one that is, are there any that have the it found Scully, and if not, throw an error or something like that.
Right.
That gets back into like the notifications and extensions that can be added later to essentially say, hey, I couldn't find our point of reference, and our point of reference right now is
that word
Scully. Yeah.
Yeah, Rambling Geek is saying almost the exact same thing here in chat. Awesome. We're all on the same path here. Good stuff. All right, so my gauge top, here it is. My gauge top in the current configuration is at 243 pixels. So let me open Notepad here, and while you're looking at the code there,
here I'll add the check there.
All right. So top of the gauge window is 243 pixels. Bottom of Scully right now is 177 pixels. Height of Scully is, what did we say, 28 pixels.
Yeah.
Okay. So the difference, the distance from the bottom of Scully to the top of the window is, what is that, 23, 66? Which is 28 over 66. 0.42, so it's a 42%. Do we even... Maker of gauge equals Scully. Model of gauge equals unigauge. Yeah, I don't
know if we need to get quite that specific, because you're causing more things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just a point of reference.
Yeah, it's just a point of reference so that we can do the scaling. Now,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably some deep learning object recognition or something like that we could probably use instead, but this is the, poor man's solution to it. Just get it done.
Yeah, yeah. So that distance from there to there is 66 pixels. Okay, that makes sense.
Oops, not the picture. I don't want the juice.
Okay.
So I'm doing an if check. If any of the lines have Scully text, do that.
CoderCat, while you're writing that, CoderCat is suggesting the number of bounding boxes returned is important. It is in the sense that
the number of non-low confidence ones is important.
Yes. Right, the ones that are marked...
Well, essentially, we need So the other check, like I'm checking for Scully, we should check for another one. And the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head is a regex to essentially say that there's another one that its text value can be parsed as an integer.
Yes, and that's actually, right, that's what we see here on lines 30, right, this for loop.
You're doing the try parse there. So then if you find one that's not, very much there. And you could theoretically even just by default skip the first one, but I'd be afraid that the order would come back different one time.
Good
because
point.
It's just a generic range. But yeah, you're checking, we're just finding all of them. So we're finding, do we have our reference point one? That's the if I just added. Okay, we do have our reference point one. We can at least attempt a look, and then you're doing the for each here and going, hey, can I find any that have a text value that can be parsed as a double is what you're doing it as.
So why don't I do this? I'm going to grab the for loop. Let's pull the for loop out and put it into another method. I'm going to control dot on that. Oh, it's not
okay.
I'm not getting my refactoring at all here. Rats.
I'm not either. Not for quick actions.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to cut that then, and I'll create another method, a private method down here that says, right, let's return a decimal and calculate or
identify or calculate gauge value.
Identify value. And I don't know what we're passing in just yet, but there's the for loop.
Yeah, so then so you're inside this, you're just getting
I'm getting the lines.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, but currently in the for loop, you're also adding that fudge factor for detecting where it is in the gauge.
Yeah.
The relative position within that bounding box of the gauge dial. So I don't know if you want to
let's do that. Do I have too many brackets here? No.
No.
Why is everything shifting on me? Oh, thank you.
I think it got my tab settings, which are slightly different than yours.
Okay. So I still need to get, well, these values, I'm going to just move these down in here because they're important to this.
Yes.
So I think this is kind of the identify the values. DNet78 is asking, instead of hard coding in Scully, maybe better to make it a parameter so people with different gauges could pass in different values. Well, DNet actually, this is right. We're building a concrete class specific to my photo, my gauge. Other folks will be able to build their own classes that implement the same interface and do something similar. Yeah, with an iGauge reader.
Yep. So they would just their custom iGauge reader in the main function, and just all of the code for handling anything that has to do with the gauge goes into those concrete classes.
Yeah. Tell you what, I would like to put the trace writer and the root object, the root detection. Let me put these. Do you think I can put those safely into class scope fields? So they're available while we do these other interactions, or should we pass them in? What do you think?
Well, so we could do a constructor that takes those two and then call a process that only actually executes the work.
Yeah, but the constructor doesn't adhere to the interface.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Or you could, I mean, you could just pass them down if you want. But honestly, I mean, fields is fine too.
Yeah.
You know.
If we make them, yeah. Okay.
You know, and then do. What is it? Trace writer?
Yep. Yep.
Something like that.
So while you're adding that up there, I can reference it here.
And then we'll just do underscore, whoops, underscore log equals log. And then we're going to do the raw data as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Underscore prefix just out of force of habit, really.
Sure.
That can definitely be changed if necessary.
All right, so there's raw data, and I'll just put an underscore here, so I'm accessing the same thing. Cool.
And then here, just to be consistent and make sure that we have the right copy of it, I'll refactor that to use the same as well. And then you're just changing this essentially to return the actual value, not the whole.
Right.
So then the if here becomes, if we have a Scully, we assume we can do the rest of our calculations. So then we would call identify. Our output for the root method would become, you know, output value dot what is it? Gauge value or value?
I think value. Yeah, value. What about? Go ahead.
No, identify value, and then any method, any parameters we need to add in.
Right. So, thinking through a little bit here, we're doing the detection of the word Scully to get that point of reference. What if? And then we got to figure out what to do otherwise. What if we take this detection and then the calculation, the identification of the top and height of the gauge, right? That calibration. If we
put it in its own
little method to identify point of reference or something.
So if there is one and its value, is it confidence or something like that?
Yeah, the word confidence, right? There's L.words. You see it down here on 44?
Okay, so L.words.
I do any.
Yeah, any.
To see if to make sure it doesn't return that low confidence. And that's kind of important to make sure that we get right. There was a shadow, there was a haze, so it making sure that we get the correct instance of it.
So if there are any that are not that, and I've got a paren that I'm missing, I think, or nope, it's an if, so no semicolon at the end.
Okay. So identify value. So if it's
not a nullable type, so I'm doing something that's not necessary.
Oh, look at that. All right. So cannot implicitly convert decimal to. Oh, this needs to be a double. All right, fine. We'll make it a double, which means this should have a D.
You'd be amazed how many people. Let's take a half second there for that.
Sure.
I am amazed how many C# programmers don't know about that.
The difference between decimal and double?
Not just the difference between decimal and double, but the whole short key there for D, M, and all that stuff. When you're declaring it, I see so many people that do a full-blown cast there, where they'll write out something that's an int or whatever, and do like a full-blown cast like this, or even go a step farther, and do an as cast. Which is not fun because as is nullable.
Yes.
And so you're doing it on a type that's not, so it can get into all kinds of crazy.
As is a reference type, this is a value type. So
Yeah.
let's just touch on that real quick in case there's folks that are beginners, intermediate C# developers not familiar with the language like we are. When you're working with basic primitive types in C#, integers, decimals, doubles, string. Well, string isn't. It's a reference type. You have two different types. You have value types and you have reference types, and they're stored in two different places in memory. Value types are stored on the stack. Quick management, real easy to work with. Reference types like classes or strings get stored on the heap, and the garbage collector takes a little bit of time to release those. That's why you'll see folks try to avoid using strings, and you saw folks all excited about the span types that were introduced in .NET.
And the stuff that's coming in C#8 around being able to mark strings as nullable or not nullable.
Yep.
At design time, but doesn't change the use case of them anyplace else, and it'll fix all your, hey, you could get a null reference here.
Oh yeah. So when you add this little hint, right, there's a D to say this is actually a double, or you add an M to force it to decimal, right? Decimal is fixed number of digits after the decimal point. Double has the rounding error at the way end, but it allocates what? Double allocates, it's 64 bits? Single is only 32? Or is it the other way around?
Yeah, somewhere in there. I know long is 64.
Yeah.
It's a 64 int.
Yeah. So when you start casting things back and forth between the different number types, it takes a bit of processing and it chews up memory. And it makes the garbage collector have to collect that memory later. By just forcing the type by using a hint like D or M, you're declaring it right up front so it knows it in the compiler before it even gets into running any of your code.
Yeah, and then especially when using the var, it comes in handy because it's that subtle hint that the compiler needs so that it doesn't, you don't get 18 different, you're not doing cast when you don't realize you're not doing cast. It's nice that the compiler helps you by not just saying, hey, I'm going to blow up here, like say like a Java or some other languages do. It allows you to write the code the way you think it should read, but under the hood, it's doing a lot more work that can cause performance issues, especially in stuff like we're doing right here, where we're doing a loop.
Oh yeah,
it can get very intensive because you're going a bunch of different ways.
Oh yeah, we want this to run through fast.
Yeah.
Thanks for the link, CoderCat, to the docs about value types. Very cool stuff.
And the changes that are coming in C#8 again around reference types being able to mark them as not nullable or nullable is going to be, I mean, in the long term, it'll mean the death of the null exception. Hopefully,
we can hope for that. So at this point, we have the method here that will identify identify the numbers, do the calculation as to where they are inside of it, but we still need the reference points at the top of gauge and the height of gauge. I think these should be parameters that we pass into this method. So I'm just going to move those right up in here. And
then we should probably have another method that takes the line that I'm finding here in my if and takes that and does the math it needs to with that.
So when it finds the position, so to make sure that folks are following along at home, when it finds the position of the word Scully, because we know the relative position between that and the top of the window, we can then calculate. We know in our reference photos, we can then calculate the relative location of the top of the window if for some reason the camera's in a different position. Okay. Got it. I think I know where we're going next. So I'm going to move that off to the side here. So it's that specific line. Select where the line. Yeah. Okay. So you're going through the array. Find the one that has the text Scully, and we have high confidence. The confidence does not equal low. Good.
Yep, and I'm going to do a small tweak to this now that I've noticed it. I can do this now. So now I can do lines.
Ah.
and simplify that down. And then now we can write our next method that's say like identify offset or whatever we want to call it, and that would be the and again, I don't know what we would call, you know.
And well, hang on, thinking the select link extension method, right? This predicate here, it projects each element. I think this should be a where.
Where? Okay. Yeah, yeah. Instead of a select, so we're not doing an allocate.
Right. So this is going to give us a collection of lines.
Yep.
Now
and
we're
then
saying
we're just assume that there should only be one. So I could make that account equals one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I don't want to. God forbid another shadow shows up and we're getting two of them that aren't low, something of that effect. I'm just going to pick one in our method, or you would just.
So what if we make this?
One.
What if we make this first or default?
First or default, we could do that. The only thing in that scenario is that again we'd have to check for that if for null though, because default could come back as a null line.
Sure, and if it is null, then we throw an exception.
Yep. Yep.
So okay.
So then this becomes, instead of lines, be line.
I'll rename it up here. Oh, okay.
Yep.
You got it first.
Yep. Equals or not equals no. Right. And then down here we can just do throw new. Biggest thing you can do in .NET, or at least that's what I was told. I don't know how accurate this was, but I was told this in one of the early classes I took at one of the really early movie theater events that MSDN did.
Oh my gosh.
From the like 2003, 2005. It was part of the
back
whole
in the
huge
day
net to release stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They said that the largest object in the BCL is the exception.
Wow.
Because it has the stack trace, and to build the stack trace could theoretically be orders of magnitude large as far as like memory.
Okay.
Because you could be, you know, several hundred methods down a chain if you really wanted to get that OCD.
Sure.
And therefore have to have all the data about that. So throwing a new exception, only do it when you absolutely must.
Absolutely. Yes. It's an exceptional circumstance. And there's a couple questions in the chat room around should we hard code the word Scully. Once again, this is a concrete implementation of the Gauge reader interface. So for this instance, it makes sense. For right, maybe there's a point of reference that we push out somewhere else, and we refactor a little bit. But the idea of unit testing some images to make sure that we can ensure that Azure always finds the word Scully.
Another count for the beard.
Leviani, thanks so much for that tier 1 sub. Yeah, we're getting closer and closer to that rainbow beard goal, Elizabeth. I'm at 4734. What is that? 260 some away. I think we're going to be dying this before the end of January. I think it's going to happen.
That could be fun.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun. We still need some followers for that beard. Yes, we do, Janesco. Hey, Crows, good to see you. Unit testing images would be more integration testing images, says Robert. At that point, I wonder if it's then duplicating testing of a black box. Yeah, I kind of agree, Robert.
Yeah, you would need to do testing. Like, we haven't written any test, and as a bad pair programmer, we're not doing TDD on this.
Yeah.
But we would have to have images to be able to do anything that or at least no, because we're just dealing everything off of that raw data object. So we could make up our own mock JSON objects.
Yes.
Result and feed into this interface. So we wouldn't actually need any images in order to be able to do this. We would just need to take that structure that you have in the repo and muck
fake
those
Azure
values.
data, right?
Yep.
Yeah, a bunch of different results. Yeah, you're right. K-Phil, Potts, and Robert. Yeah.
Yep. So we found our line. So now we're gonna have another method here that's identify. What are our We need top of gauge and height of gauge are our two values.
Yeah, so what if, let me just, if I were to mock up a method here, what if we returned a tuple that was int top of gauge, int height of gauge?
The new value tuple stuff is freaking awesome.
Love this. Great feature of C#, was it 7.1? And if we call this calculate height of gauge window?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Right.
And then we feed in our line there as a parameter.
And the line, what's the type on the line? It's a line. A line is a line. Okay.
Why don't we call it reference line just to be really clear there?
Okay. Okay. I like it.
And then now we're going to do all of our calculations that you were doing around that.
Yeah. So,
and then this may be where we want to calculate. Maybe we might even want a scale factor or something like that coming out of this. I don't know yet, though. All the math that we need. You know, the percent difference between our references. So
okay. Let's come back to that.
Yeah. I don't know if it would be necessary or not. Maybe we can calculate it in line in the other method.
Maybe. Okay.
So height of gauge is going to be, how would we calculate that value?
So the height of the gauge window, we know. Okay, we know by the reference photo, right? I'm going to go back and bring up the raw JSON again.
Yep.
Over here. So I really should put this into the project so it's just out there and available, shouldn't I?
We could. Why don't we stick it in the test project as a file there, like a JSON file, because then we can use it as we can load it for testing purposes.
That's a great idea. I like it. So let me add JSON file and let me call this
test data or something like that. Examples.
Sure. Example data. Right. So, and then just paste it in. Oh, now I get the formatting.
Yeah.
All right.
Too bad the bounding box is not a more concrete type.
Yes.
Because it's XY pairs, so like it could be an array of objects that just have an X and a Y property essentially on them.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's not worth, I think, us modifying that because, but that's essentially how you have to think of this. Though.
Yeah, if it was delivered like this.
Yeah. I don't think that's valid JSON.
No.
But yeah, or I think for valid JSON that those would have to be the curly braces with an actual property name.
Yeah. Let me undo that. All right. And go ahead for 1 second here. I've got a daughter that needs to ask me a question.
Okay. So let's have a look here. So now let's call our method here. Okay.
She's wandered off. All right. Is that I am Digia for JSON? Those could be an array of number arrays. Yeah.
Yeah, could be. I mean, we could probably add a concrete type called a bounding box that took those and left corner, right corner kind of a thing. But again, probably not worth our time too much.
No, but right, text result is just a thing over here. Int bounding box. We could add a property here that's the coordinates that does do the parsing and gives us a rectangle.
Yeah.
But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we've already got a thing here. We don't need to reinvent it. Okay, so calculate height of gauge window line. This is, we could actually return and decompose. Right, we could say var.
Decompose. Yeah, this is, oh, you can even go outside because you're going to do var for both of them.
Yeah.
So you can do var outside the curly braces, only say that once, and then do, yep.
Height of gauge, and then pass them in here. And then, right, no more red lines down here. That's the same method. Now we just have to do the actual math to calculate the height of the gauge. This, oh man, I'm getting like code geek shivers here. It's like, yes! Let's see. Just wondering how much the code is tightly coupled to the exact Azure response. I don't think we're coupled to that exact Azure response. We are definitely coupled to the format from the recognize API.
If they change it, we're gonna have issues. But again, if we go back to that where you added the stuff earlier in the function, that service address includes a version number in it.
Yeah, right there. You're right.
So the likelihood of us getting, I mean, they could definitely.
Sure.
They could break us. It's not out of the realm of possible, but if again they're doing proper symver and things of that nature, we shouldn't get a different object structure.
I would expect them to change that to v3.0 if they change the structure of the output.
Yep.
So
I would assume that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great.
At which point we would need to change it.
Yeah, CoderCat has a great point, and I think we're protected because of that. Cool. Okay. So calculate the height.
So to calculate the height, I think you were passing. If we look at that as well again, the function there, I think you were just passing that stuff in, weren't you? The height of the gauge, the digit height.
So the digit height.
You were reading those all out of config manager. It looks like here.
I was, but down here on line 61, we can calculate it because we have the line. Right? Yep. That was me being stupid in that initial.
MVP, get it done.
Yeah, you're right.
MVP is not a skateboard; it's a wheel.
Oh man, that's good.
So that's the stereotype that I've always heard when you're talking about MVP stuff. Everybody's like, I don't want a car, I want a skateboard. But in reality, it needs to be a wheel, then a skateboard, then a scooter, then a motorcycle, then a car. Yeah, you're going to completely rewrite the engine component between a motorcycle and a car because they are fundamentally different. But you're going to learn so much stuff writing the motorcycle engine component that's going to make the car component better that you would never learn if you just write a generic engine component and not a motorcycle engine.
Very cool. Hey, can somebody, Robert Tables likes that, so does Bardaki. They're folks in the chat room really like that. Can somebody clip that? Get a clip of that quote from Elizabeth? That's really good stuff. I want to make sure we save that and get a chance to share that later. Awesome insight there. Thank you. Yeah, and I just got this running. I'm refactoring, abstracting things. I got to take time and do that later.
Yep, and that's what we're doing here today is slightly improve it.
Yeah.
You're smarter today than you were yesterday, and therefore you can learn.
Yeah, and Robert had a question about actually abstracting out the Azure facilities, right? Whether it's the Azure detection here. Since we're building an Azure function, I'm kind of assuming the whole way through that you're using Azure. To jump to another cloud provider or another service feels a little strange. If this was a Lambda on AWS, would make sense to use the Amazon facilities.
Yeah, and in that scenario, the step here that we do where we call out to it to send to text recognizer, that would become our interface point at that point.
Yeah.
And you could somebody could create a pull request to go, oh, I want to use Google's tool. I want to use AWS's tool. But this whole method here for send to recognize text API, that whole method would be your interface point at that point, not just that string there for the service address.
Okay, so now based on some of that feedback there in the chat room, and and what we're talking about abstracting this, I'm feeling really guilty about how I named this. Where did it go? Text result root object. I feel really guilty about that. Do you mind if I rename that real quick? I'm going to do a refactoring.
Go for it.
Right? Can I do an F2 on that? Yes, it will. Oh, thank God. Root object, I think I'm okay with, but I want to rename this from the text result to Azure recognize text, and then
I'm kind of, to be honest, I'm surprised. I mean, you did this as a, I assume a paste JSON kind of a thing.
Yep.
I'm surprised there's not like a Nougat package that has these objects in it.
There's probably an Azure.
Okay, an Azure client. Yeah. Okay.
But it was easier for me to just write the
HTTP client call. Yeah. Go get it.
Right. It's all of how many lines? 10 lines, 15. Yep. So
yeah, not bad at all.
There is no guilt. There's only the realization, and the refactor says that's all.
Red green refactor.
Yeah. Oh, and Rambling Geek has a clip for us. Thank you so much, Rambling Geek.
Thank you. I will have to tweet that later.
Oh yeah.
So now we're calculating our gauge height. And what I say we do is we turn your config manager values into, again, I'm gonna make the same assumption like the Scully, that those aren't going to change.
No.
Those values that you were getting out of config manager, but the idea I think we should have for them is to be reference values.
Yes.
And again, I don't know if these are truly going to be needed in the math because we haven't written it yet, but you're going to want to know, like, in our reference images, the S was this many pixels high. And therefore, in our actual image that we just recognized, what's the difference in the scale there? And therefore, that can be used as a value in the identify value gauge. Again, I don't know if that's absolutely necessary, but we would want to know, like, what is our reference height so that we can add our fudge factor to that bounding box for the actual top of the gauge.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, I don't know if you would want, like, you had what were the values? Config manager, gauge top, gauge height, and gauge digit height. We're calculating gauge digit height, but that's the actual value, not
the reference.
Yeah. And so we don't know if we need to add the image is, the camera is back farther, so the height of the gauge is smaller or whatever, I don't know how that actually would work in reality.
No, I don't know either.
Yeah, I don't know if the camera's closer, are they going to be bigger? If the camera's farther away, are they going to, is it zoomed in? Is it sitting on an angle? That kind of stuff. Yeah, we're probably not going to account for all of the crazy.
No.
But as you see, it moved. Let me update and add a greater translate.
Well, so right, that's the problem that we have right now, is if it moves, because it's hard coded in the configuration, we're kind of toast. But if we use those reference points,
yeah,
right?
if we change these config values to be in our reference images, our gauge top was 18 pixels or whatever it is off the top. Okay, what did we calculate our gauge top to be? We calculated it to be 15 pixels, so we're off by 3% or whatever it ends up being,
Yes. Okay. So
that's my thought process. I don't know if that's, again, self-taught here. No.
Right, and this is kind of the. I think if we use just a regular proportion here, we can we could say, well, here's our known proportion, and we know the position of it, so let's calculate the second half of it.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Let's do it. So we know. All right. So let me bring back in those. So we know that in the reference image, The top of the gauge window is 243 pixels. We also know that in the reference, the height of the window is 100 pixels, right?
Okay.
And that was literally me opening. Let me see. I have. Wow, I've got so many windows open. Not this. There's the docs. That was me opening. Here's one of the real pictures. I want to edit it with paint.net. Open with paint.net. Paint.net is awesome. So many features in here.
Yes, and I love that it's in the store now.
Yes. So when you mouse around in here, it actually shows the coordinates down here in the bottom corner, and they're really tiny. But when I mouse right in here, I can see that the position is 242. Right, and I can see down at the bottom here, the position it's 349, 342, right at the bottom corner. So that's where I got the 100 pixels, is I actually started drawing red lines on this and measured the distance between the two. So really cool stuff.
Yeah, and if we take that as 100% proportion based on this image.
Yes.
We can then say, hey, what did we calculate this time?
Right. Okay. So let's start that proportion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to do this?
Sure. Why don't we?
All right. So if we say the reference bottom of Scully is right there.
And this is, again, I would almost just hard code these, just like we're doing the Scully.
Yes.
These are specific to your
this implementation. Yes, is 177. And then the top of the gauge window, right? Thank you. Well, wait. And we need to know the reference top of Scully as well. Right? In the reference one.
Yep.
Is it's not here. It's over here.
Do we need to know the reference top, or do we want the reference?
We need to know the reference height of it.
Yes, yeah.
Right, and that is in our example data. So there's Scully. It goes from 152 to 179. So that's what, 27 pixels? Oh, wait, that's the low one. Hang on. It goes from 149 to 177, 28 pixels. That's what it was. Okay.
Yep.
So 28, reference height is 28. Okay, so we have the reference bottom, the reference height. So we can use that now to say.
So now we need to calculate our current values for those.
Do we also need the reference distance between the two?
I think we need a reference distance from the bottom of Scully to
the window.
To the yeah, and that is that used in your other method?
It's not, but we need this in order to calculate the top of the gauge.
Yes. Do we use the top of the gauge in? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the reference height of the gauge is 100.
Okay.
I'm just going to take a peek over at chat and make sure. Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure that nobody's dropping in a pair programming comment saying, "Oh, you missed something."
Yeah.
Okay. So the relative percentage, right? So if we make that a double, right? Relative percent is, oh wait, we do need the reference height of Scully so that we can build that, because that's the only thing we have, right, to compare against, so that we can get that relative percentage.
Ah, yes, yeah.
And then we can start calculating the distances. So it's not even distance to window. Right? That's
distance to window. I think the distance to window is going to give you, no, I guess it wouldn't need.
Right. These are the two that we're comparing we're going to compare against.
Yeah, so height of Scully should be the 28, correct?
Yeah.
Our reference height of Scully should be 28.
Yeah, okay. Ref height of Scully is 28. And then we're going to use that as our, right, the actual height of Scully is reference line, bounding box. I think it was, what was it, 5? Yeah. Minus reference line, bounding box, 1. Right, going back to, let me put the sample data next to this so we can kind of see the two next to each other.
So that would be 502 or
149
no.
and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and the 177. So it'd be 177 from 149 will give me the height. The relative percentage then is going to be the reference height. No, not that one. Divided by the reference, no, the actual height. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so now that's not going to be a double because this is an int.
Cast it as a double.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it will be.
Okay. So that's our relative percentage. Then the distance to the top of the window is 66. So we're going to multiply by that relative percentage.
Yes, that's what I would assume you would do. And then that would give us the top of the gauge value, correct? Our return.
Right. So if we multiply by the relative distance over the real distance. Is it multiply or is it going to be divide by? I think it's going to be divide by because it's on.
Until I have a. This is the point where I'd start writing test cases.
Right. Oh man, here's the thing. This is the kind of thing I'm working on with my daughters in school, in middle school math class, you know? Yeah. Right, it's x over y equals, right, b over c. And it's, right, we're putting, right, this is the ref over actual, oops. So that means if this is, we have the actual, no. And then if we have the reference distance, then the actual is going to be this one. Yeah, we need a math lab. Yeah. Right? So to get, right, to calculate.
Well, we can calculate the actual.
Right, we're looking at.
We can't calculate the actual because it's not given to us as a bounding box result.
Right.
To that top red line that you've got there is what we're trying to calculate, that value.
Right, we're trying to calculate this distance right here.
Yeah, and then use that as a factor so that we can say, okay, we assume it's going to be at this height.
Well, no, we've already got we've got the percentage, right? We know the relative percentage of this, the reference percentage of this.
Okay, so I guess, so then what we really need to do is the window height, the distance between the two, the top red line and the bottom red line there.
Right.
We need to apply our factor, our relative percent to that number. So we know what it is in this window because you've calculated that distance between those two lines.
Right. Well,
So then we would just say that okay, say it's 100 pixels, right? We or 200 pixels, and we get that it's, you know, it's moved back and it's 85% of our reference. Then we would just say 85% of 200 is X.
Right. Okay. But
right? So it'd be 200 times 85, our relative percent there, equals whatever our new height is for that gauge. And that height of gauge now tells us we can return that so that we can give it to the other system. And then we can, that top value there, we can do the same thing to, essentially, is say, based on the relative percent there of our height of our S, we can do it. So we essentially, what I'm trying to do is simplify us down so that we're referencing everything off of the base of the height of S, not that gap between S and the top of the gauge, so that we have one reference point, which is just the S.
yes. Okay, so we have the one, we do have that, right? That's the
height of Scully right there, right?
Right.
That's our actual height that we got when, based on what was given back to us from Azure's
yes
service. So then we calculate our relative to our known good height, or our known height, which is the 28 pixels there.
Yes, right. That's what we've got there.
Yep. And then so now we know our default height of the gauge is 100 pixels. So that it would be 100 times our relative percent equals our adjusted height.
Cool. Okay. Okay. So
right?
let's.
I mean, I'm taking a whack here, and then we can write unit tests around this.
var adjusted.
Ultimately it'd be the returned height. So it'd be height of gauge. Yeah.
Int top of gauge. Int height of gauge. No, that's the type.
0, 0.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
To start with, right?
So we've got, so then if we multiply.
So it'd be relative height, relative ref gauge, or ref height gauge.
Well, out values, right? The height of, okay, if we did that one first, it would be the relative percentage times the
ref height.
The ref height of the gauge.
Yep. Yeah, and then
need to convert that to an int. So let's say math dot floor. So if we did the same thing, out values, the top of gauge is, now why did I?
Yeah, what's it?
It's still giving me a double back.
Yeah.
Do I really have to do round? No, it's still. Why does round give a double? Oh, because you can send it to multiple. Okay.
Yeah, you can tell it how many you want, how many decimal places you want.
I want to.
I think just cast it. That's how I do it.
Truncate still takes you to. Fine. Feel bad.
Yeah.
So we're going to do the same thing here, casting, and we're going to do that relative percentage times the reference. This is the top, so it's the reference, well, distance to the window.
Is it?
So it would be times the reference.
Yes. You're calculating that blue line you were drawing in the window.
Yeah. So that would give me the distance to the window, which I'd then need to add to the bottom of Scully, which is bounding box 5. Right?
So the distance to window, that 66 pixels, is from the bottom of the S to the top red line there.
Right, if we do that, just to make it a little bit more readable, if we call this And then move this over here. Makes it a little bit clearer to read.
And then, yeah, you would need to...
No, let me leave that. And then here's our...
Reuse your bottom of Scully there in line here.
Yep.
There we go. Yeah, that looks okay. Now, my only question is in our calculations for identifying the actual gauge value, we're giving it these heights and the top of gauge as return values. So we come down here in our code and say return out
values.
Out values, right? Okay, so we're returning those values for it now. My question is, and then we're going to pass those into these identified values. Do we need to add a third type that is this relative percent so that it can be used in its calculations? Like, does it need to add that same relative calculation to the digit height or anything like that?
I don't think so, because we know the digit height.
We're calculating an actual digit height there.
Yep, we're calculating it from the bounding box down here on 74 where you are. Yeah, so I think we're okay there.
So here, I'm going to do the same thing we just did, which is bottom.
Oh, the bottom of digit.
Digit. Just so that it's again more clear why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Hey, Crows, thanks so much for gifting a sub to Joe Philly there. That's your 5th sub you've gifted. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll match and make a donation to Black Girls Code. And Crows, you're going to get to use the .NET bot now everywhere on Twitch and show off that purple mug that shows that you're a subscriber to the channel.
Okay, so we have the bottom of digit there now being used. And then we calculate a relative distance between our top of gauge, which we've already calculated.
Yep.
To be how close to the top are we? Are we close to the center of that height? Are we close to the middle of that height?
You got it. And then
so yeah, I think we've made this scalable now based on those relative top and height there.
Right, that it'll scale the image appropriately. So thinking out loud and just walking through this, if we had the exact same numbers passed in here, right? If it was 100 if we got the relative height of Scully was 28 and 28, right? So if the height we identified in some test data,
percent would be 0.
Would be 1.
Yes, it would be
right.
1. Yeah, sorry.
So the height of gauge would be 1 times the reference height would be 100. And we would return.
Our height of gauge would be 100.
Yeah.
And then if we got the distance, the ref distance would be 66, so we'd set that as the top of gauge.
Now,
plus the bottom of Scully. So it'd be the top of gauge would not be 66 pixels. It would be
66 plus, whatever the bottom of Scully, which would be 77, takes me to 243, which is the correct location.
Yep.
Cool.
So what I highly suggest that we do is probably now. So what do we ultimately return from our process? An oil tank reading of a value, right? Of E150, right? What would the thank you for that.
I can fix spelling.
I am horrible at spelling.
So all right, so this will return back. If we go back over to the function, right? Instead of calling calculate absolute value here like this.
Yes, we would call our interface.
Right.
So we would either pass it in. I don't know if that's something you can do via the trigger. I don't know if DI works with Azure Functions.
I don't think so.
So so in that scenario, then we would just at the top of our line here create our what did we call it? An iGauge reader. So we do, you know, var gauge, reader equals new. And actually, we probably want to do just to be explicit about it, and then we would just say new. What did we call it? Vertical?
It is a vertical numbered float gauge.
Yep. So we just knew that up, and then down here in our stuff here, we would just say gauge reader dot process text results, and then we would pass in result, and then we're not passing in any of these values, so we do something like this, and then this becomes new oil.
Yep, oil tank reading. Yeah.
Reading date time. And again, the nice thing about doing that as an object that we're passing in there is if we need to add extra data later, or one of our people that reuses this, if they need to add extra data, they can tack it into this object. It doesn't change the signature of the method at all.
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, if
and then if somebody needs to add, say, like a dial gauge or a digital gauge reader or something of that effect, they can just new up a new concrete type there.
Yeah. Thinking out loud.
Yep.
Right. We could say, right, iGauge reader, right, gauge reader. I'm just making it different so it doesn't conflict here. But we could do something like, right. Oh man.
Oh, you could. Yeah, definitely.
Numbered float gauge.
Some people are not a fan of
reflection.
The reflection to do that, but it works.
Right, and right, create instance. Isn't there a string that you can pass, not just the type, or do I actually have to? Yeah, string assembly name, string type name. So fine, I'd have to give it the assembly name, which is, I forget the name of the assembly name. Who cares? But you get my point, right? We could eventually turn that into a configuration value that you pass in and say, this is this is the type of my gauge to go measure. Oh, so cool. So cool. Okay.
That actually would be that simple change from what I've got there with gauge reader. And again, I'm uppercasing and shouldn't be, so somebody could do that as a pull request very easily.
Oh my gosh, yes. Before we wrap up, let's write one little unit test to make sure that our relative positioning works. Where did that go? In iGauge reader, I'm going to move the concrete gauge out to a right. Is it going to let me do the refactor and move to another type? It's not going to let me do the refactor. Oh, there it goes. Move type to, yes, to another file. Right, it is right there. I feel like no, I don't want to do IntelliCode just yet. I feel like I should put that almost in a gauges folder. For right now, it's fine.
So then now we would go and add a iGauge test class or test fixture, kind of a thing, right?
Yeah. But I really want to focus on the calculate height of gauge window. And I know it's kind of a bad practice to make something internal and make it internals visible too. Reflection is very powerful. Yes, it is. Janos Sandre. Woo.
Very powerful. So yeah, we could definitely do that. We should theoretically, though, based on our calculations of the data in our example data there. So in that example, under the old code, what value would be returned? For the actual gauge value. So in this case with the 50,
for
I think it's
where it's located. I think it is actually 150 because it's right in the middle.
Yeah. So why don't we take that example and just test the high level interface? I mean, we could definitely do the internals if you want and test the individual methods. But like you said, that some people kind of
be a little bit far. So, all right, I'm going to add then a test class. Let's add, and let's call this vertical numbered float gauge.
JSON net read.
Right, public void should return. I'm going to just start with a simple one here.
Yep.
Before going and turning it into a theory
like
with a bunch of test
or
data.
Something like that. Yeah. And I'm going to paste just at the top here. I just snagged this from JSON.net's website. This is how to read the JSON file. So if we now copy our JSON, you know, our path here, and if we do this as like a relative path and all that.
Yep. So I will just control dot into some of these to get some of those using statements cleared up.
And I don't know if we have references to it or not, but that's just a basic, and then that should give us our results file. So if I come back up to text results, this should be a root.
Well, actually, JObject parse, isn't there a generic version of that will parse it as a type? There's 3 overloads.
Yeah. So that one's showing so the read all text essentially. So that one's showing that. So that's read it as a string essentially. And then this is the memory performant one is to do the stream. So it's showing you two ways to do it here.
Okay. I was going to say, isn't there... Go ahead.
So we could do the easier one, which is just JSON.convert.
Yeah. Yeah, Vlad has it right there. JSON.convert or JSON converter.
Yeah, JSON convert dot deserialize object, and then we just say our root object and then we're getting that string and go into town on it.
Yeah.
And then over here we just have to say
change the type, change that to a var.
Root object.
I'm going to make example data. Let me change the properties on that so that it does get copied to the output directory. So it's just there in the same folder.
I'm going to hold you there for half a second there.
Go ahead.
Actually, that's going to trigger an always build. Every time you press F5 or F6 or anything, it will build every time. It will not do the auto, like, oh, I've already built, there's no code change. So you're going to trigger a build every time now. If you change that the build action from none to content, does the same thing but does not cause that problem. Now change your copy always to
do not copy.
Do not copy. And when you do this, especially in .NET Core, the cool thing about that, you don't want to do both copy always or copy content, but in .NET Core, ASP.NET Core classes and stuff like that, it copies it relative to where it is in the project.
Yes.
Rather than copying it to the bin directory. Now, again, test projects, I may be wrong there, and we may have to do the copy always. I haven't messed with test projects in this all that much, but we just recently took a project that would, every time you hit build, for a client of ours, it would take 15 minutes to build. Because so many of the projects had these things that said copy always because they wanted them when they got published. Change it to content, especially in .NET Core projects. ASP.NET Core projects. It copies it as part of the published stuff as well.
Okay.
So
cool.
Something there that
something to be aware of.
As somebody that does CI/CD quite a bit, kind of drives me nuts.
Okay. So we'll have the data now in the root object. Now we need to create our. Oh no. Visual Studio's crashing on me.
No.
Are you kidding? Quick, save everything.
Okay, I hit save a bunch of times. I don't know if I caught it.
We'll see. Oh, Visual Studio. Where's that sad trombone? Oh. Disabling extension Liveshare may solve issues. No, actually, I want Liveshare. Thank you.
So it's Liveshare that's causing the crash.
Well, that's what it said. All right, I got to sign back into Liveshare. I wish I would remember it, since I'm signed into Visual Studio.
I think if you see how you have the little spinner, I guess not. Never mind. Mine seems to. So again, that might be a.
All right. There's the new Liveshare session. I'm going to control dot on this, get the using statement back in there, and change this back to. Are you kidding? It's hanging on me again now.
And see, I'm not even in yet, so it's not.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, why don't we
hold
just off on the Liveshare part?
Just get the test running.
Yep. So that second part there, line 23 through 28, is another way of reading it.
Yeah.
So those aren't necessarily needed.
Come on. Are you kidding? It just dumped again on me.
Liveshare's not even open. Okay, maybe you need to disable the plugin.
Okay, that time it just crashed. Nice. Didn't even try to recover. Oh. Tried killing it and restarting, says Vlad. It killed itself. Let me see here. All right, so if I change that to example data, control dot on this one, there's my using statement, and it doesn't, it's dying on the refactoring. Look at that.
It's there, though. That's the fun thing.
Yeah.
Like at the top.
Yep, and poof. All right, let's try the other version of Visual Studio. So this is, I forget which, 15.9 something.
I think the last is 15.9.4.
Yeah. All right, reopen, and yeah, we're a little bit over time I wanted to stop at. Let's just wrap up this unit test just to confirm here. And I wanted to check the properties on. Come on. Make sure that that's still marked as, yep, content do not copy. Good.
But see, don't run the, because it's there on line 3.
Yeah. Well, that's the old one.
Is it? Did we?
Right, because I moved text result to Azure Recognize Text. So if I control dot Azure Recognize Text, now it works.
Because you removed the other one first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to get rid of this second way that it recommended doing this. Change this to example data. And this is the Azure readings.
Yeah, and then now we should be able to call our interface there and pass in that.
Right. Okay, so this is our analyzer, something like that, equals new vertical numbered float gauge. Oh, that's going to think this. Fixture. Add reference to that project. There we go. Arrange, act, assert. Yes. So this is my arranging. The 3 A's. I'm about to act, and then we will assert. All right, so we've got that. Our act is going to be analyzer dot process text result. We need a trace writer. Oh, no.
Do you have MLQ in this project?
MLQ?
MLQ, our mock.
Oh, MOQ. Yes, I do. Yeah. But I think I actually reference trace. Right, look at that. Calculate absolute value. That might.
Gauge.
Does that even. Yeah, it's still there. Okay. But it is passing in a trace writer.
I think that's in your base fixture.
Yeah.
So you're just doing what I was going to say to do online. You're just saying new mock of that, go.
So let's inherit from that. So it's just available.
Yep.
Come on. Control dot. All right. The oil tank reading, that's the Azure readings. And then, oh, no. That's it's a new oil tank reading. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
We're not looking at the date.
The date is not needed for this test.
So that's going to be my output data is SUT. So then I'm going to assert equal. I'm looking for 150, and the actual that it's returning is SUT value. All right.
If we did our math right, that should be.
It should be. We got a red X here. Let's take a look at.
So we're probably our relative path is probably not right.
Yeah.
Like we may have to do like get current directory and blah blah blah.
I'm looking for Test Explorer. You dock over here. All right. This, that. Yep, file not found. Looking in.
So yeah, it's looking in the bin. I think you would probably need to go up a couple.
So looking down here. Yeah, that example data didn't copy over.
So if you go up to.
Ooh, geez.
Is it there?
Right, that's the live unit testing folder.
Yeah. So yeah, I think in this case we probably do want the copy always just to make it simple, because it will put it in the bin directory in that scenario. You could do like get the test context and get the relative.
Well, let's do copy if newer then. Right, and then let me go back to Test Explorer. Rerun. Go. You can do it.
I do love that live unit test run.
Reference object not found. Okay, so it didn't find that, right? That's our error if it doesn't find Scully.
Yep.
All
or
right.
at least, So this is where I'd start setting breakpoints.
It was here. All right. So look at that. It actually, why am I getting lines here? It should show me that it got down into here. Let me close that. Don't need that.
Yeah, really. Why is it?
Closing some of these other ones. So here, let me rename the file. Yeah, go ahead, rerun. It'll make you feel good.
Yeah, I'll go back to your. It'll show.
Oh, well, wait. We actually got much further.
Yeah.
Yeah, reference object not found. So now here we go.
It's throwing an exception or not doing something right on our to calculate height of gauge window. I bet we're.
If line does not equal null, hang on. It's always going to throw this.
Oh, yes, it is. We need the return. We need the return before it. Return out.
Oh, well,
Yeah, that's what I was expecting to be there. Yeah, sorry. That got lost somewhere.
So then if we do that and drop this.
Either way, the else would work as well.
And let's rerun. Unit testing is hitting a lot of code. It shouldn't. It shouldn't. We're trying to execute and make sure that this is passing through and processing properly. My live unit test here should... There we go. So it's breaking somewhere right here where it's trying to find that line. Let's put a break there and let's debug.
is my first or default there?
Might be. Right, it should find it. All right, so line is null. Why is line null? Raw data, recognition result, lines. Let's look at the lines. So there's 3 lines. L.text equals Scully.
Yep, and then go to words there.
L words confidence equals low. So that one is marked as low. Okay, so you know what? Let's get rid of. This is in our example data. Let's change our example data.
Well, yeah. What's our? I'm.
Yeah, 2 of them.
Only low. It's only low there
So
in our example data.
So let's get rid of it.
Is there? When the confidence is high, what does it put there?
It doesn't list anything.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I just changed that. So now if we rerun this. So it actually did what it was supposed to do. It's just our test data may be
wonky.
Look at that. Expected 150 got 149 too.
Okay, so our math is slightly wonky.
No, I think our math is pretty good. It's just right for a
well, if we fed in the same values, so if we gave it our reference height and our stuff is all the same, why is it not?
Right, so
does our bounding box there,
right, 149 to 177.
Well, that's weird. Or different. Why are the values different between the two?
I don't know. That does feel weird. I'm not looking at the one inside here, though.
Okay.
I'm only looking, right, we're only looking at that one. The one on the line.
So yeah, that seems to be some of our math might be, because based on my understanding of what we did for the math, it should come out as 150 exactly.
It should, yeah. Right, 149 to 177. Right, gosh, I would love to be able to break in here a little bit, and these aren't showing.
Yeah, just let's. You have to rebuild to get it to trigger. So if you add a space, remove a space, do something to cause a build to happen, it'll rerun.
Cause it to detect to change. Look at that. Pfft, it didn't even execute these.
That's weird.
So let's go down here, and let's set a breakpoint here.
Yeah, and then just run as debug.
Debug it and see it. Yeah, we did cast to an int coming out because we want those pixels to be.
Yeah. Nice round numbers, but what's our relative percent? Like our relative percent should be 1.
1.
Okay. So then what's our ref? 1 times 100 equals what?
So that's fine. The top, the distance to the window is 66, 177.
What do we expect the top of the gauge to be?
What do we expect? 243.
Is that what you had in your old hard-coded numbers?
Looking. Gauge top 243.
Okay. So
and
those
100.
are correct.
So yeah.
And so our out values are 100 and 243.
Yep. So then when it goes in here to identify the value. Okay.
So what are we doing wonky here?
No, don't notify me all that stuff. So this. Okay, so the percent of the location is 058. So the percent of the location is not exactly in the middle. Ha! So the digit is not exactly in the middle.
So why is it saying the digit's not in the middle? So what's our digit height there?
Right, our digit height is 50. That's fine. But
That's right.
our relative top of the digit is 29. Right, and we would want the top of the digit to actually be 25.
Would we?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
how are we adding 4 to that shouldn't be there?
It's the example data, right? So
Oh, it's
doing
the example data is slightly different.
Yeah, right. So the top is 272, and then the bottom of it is 322. So if we scooch that up, if we move it just a smidge, we make this 268, and we make this 318, right? So just back it off by 4. Save that, rerun. So it gets the new values to calculate, and we're just moving it. Boom.
Boom. Cool.
Woohoo! We got it. Nice.
So my assumption here then is that when you created this JSON or retrieved this JSON, you ran it through a picture that was not one that's where the camera is today.
No, actually, so it was it detected the text, but I never did that additional little bit of fudge factor on it.
Okay.
So awesome stuff. And so now it will detect the location of things and appropriately recalculate everything. That is phenomenal. That's going to be really cool. The text was in a slightly different position than what we assumed. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. I really, really like that change. And all green.
And then now anybody that wants to add a different type of gauge or anything of that nature, they can do so.
Yes.
And the one thing I think you might want to add to this, just as a side factor, is a comparison, because this is for your heating oil, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. You might want to compare your indoor temperature. So I don't know if you have a smart thermostat or not.
Not yet. But go ahead. Go ahead.
You might want to capture not outside temperature, inside temperature, and your oil gauge, because then you can do the calculation of how efficient.
Yes. Oh yeah.
You're being with it based on those calculations, those values, and you can track with teenagers and teenage girls. They tend to be cold, so they might want to crank that number up.
Yes. Very cool. Let's all right, so I'm going to go over to, where is it? I don't have a PowerShell open. Let me open a PowerShell and let's get this committed. Phenomenal stuff. Awesome. I'm going to add all the things. And if I just git commit, so I get an editor here so we can key this in. Let's see. So how do I put in so that we get the shared? Right. How does
Co-authored by.
Yeah, that's it. Co-authored.
Authored by. And I will do this here
And it's,
to the chat so that everybody can see what the.
And then, right, your ID is MOZTS?
For
GitHub.
GitHub, let me double check. Some of them it's 2005, some of them it's not. So I can never remember.
2005, there it is.
2005, yep.
Fantastic. Added.
But I think maybe the docs want my email address, not. Yeah, so it's name, angle brackets, email address.
You need all that?
Yeah, so it's name space author email address.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How can we? Wait, let me go grab your information then from here.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Right. How can I view that then? No, it just shows.
I think if you go to my account, but I can also give it to you, so you can do Elizabeth Schneider, whatever, and then Elizabeth at speedy-geek will work.
All right. So if I delete this,
and I think it wants, if you're doing it in a, yep, never mind.
Elizabeth at Speedy Geek.
Speedy-geek.
Speedy-geek.net.com. Fantastic. Let me yank that line. There we go. And then delete this. Right? Do I have that right?
I think so. At least by what I'm reading in the docs here.
Cool. Save it. Push it.
Works on my machine.
Should be able to click on that verified.
Yeah, I'm OCD. I have a... Here, I'll show it to you guys. I have a UB key.
Ah, nice.
And it's got my PGB cert on it.
I haven't done that yet, and it's a must-have to get done.
Yeah, so I do that, and then I now I sign all my commits. So if I try to commit, I have my git config set up in a way that it won't let me
It's got my wrong ID on here, but that works. That's fine. Awesome.
Yeah, so if I sign anything or try to commit anything, it yells at me that, hey, I can't sign. And so then I have to plug this in, and it lets me sign in and make sure that it's not done. And GitHub just added you can use some type of cert. I think it's for email signing. So you can use a public cert that you can get, public private key cert.
Awesome.
All
right.
The UB keys support that as well.
Yeah. I got to get my hands on one of them. This was great. Thank you so much for your help today. So just to recap, so we added an interface. We pulled out all that logic that's specific to my gauge, put it somewhere else, and now we can load up and act specifically on that with those specific measurements for my gauge. That's tremendous, and it's going to enable other folks to modify and enhance so it works with their gauges as well.
Yep.
Very cool. Let's so we wrapped up. We pushed all of our code out there. Let's set up a raid. I believe our friend NoOpCat is running. So I'm going to set up a raid to send all of our friends over there. If you want to hang out, if you want to visit and check out her stream, don't have to do anything. You can sit right back and it'll send you over there. This video will be available later today over on YouTube. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. I really appreciate you pair programming today and helping out with this. And
thank you.
We'll see everybody on Tuesday. All right. Take care and say hi to NoOpCat for us. Bye. And